ice so that they're not distracted, because he's basically giving them every suggestion in the world live and loud as they're on the ice. And then he yells at referees,
Mm-hmm.
and it was too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to him and I asked him to record himself.
Mm-hmm.
And because of his experience, he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was effective for him.
I think
Uh,
it's a really, really good technique, Wally, and
yeah,
it's a really good technique. I had exactly that experience with a soccer mom was very upset the way this coach was yelling at her kid. And I mean, what can you do? I said videotape him. And then if he sees what he looks like, it's an eye-opening thing. I think that's a really good idea. And it's funny, I had an experience, well, I was contacted last week by a women's U18 team, um, by the coach. I'm going to work with the team in a week or so. And it's a new coach. And she said the previous coach was very, very hard on the girls, yelled at the girls. And I'm trying to change that. They're waiting for the next person to yell at them. And, that's like we said, I think we had this conversation, Wally and I did yesterday. And I said, Ryan Walter, who was a fine player, captain of the Canadians, later became a good coach. And Ryan was coaching at one time, he was an assistant with the Canucks, and he was also the national team coach with the Canadian women's team. And he said to me that there's a real difference in coaching men and women. He said, if I'm working with the NHL team and I don't say anything to one of the guys for 2 weeks, he thinks he's doing fine. If I don't say anything to one of the girls for 2 days, she thinks there's something wrong. So women are much more sensitive to that kind of input. And if somebody is yelling, even if they're yelling appropriate instructions, it's they're going to react differently than boys would, and more in the direction of it being counterproductive.
well, Hal, I have a story related to exactly what you said. I don't know if oxymoron is the right word, but that same coach that recorded himself was working with a spring team. The U13 girls get to move up to U15. So he's got the first year U15s in really competitive hockey. And they're playing a game and against an opponent that's superior to them. And between periods, what he did, I've never seen any coach do. And the result was shocking for me. If you can imagine girls turning 14, having a bad period, him coming into the room with a loud voice, but he knew what he was doing. He played this role. He was angry with their lack of compete, their lack of effort, and in his languaging, he said, "Some of you don't want to play. You're whining. You're crying on the bench. Well, if you don't want to go out there, take your equipment off." And he slammed his large whiteboard down on the floor with a dry erase marker. He said, "If you don't learn how to compete at this level, you shouldn't be here. So if you don't want to compete, take your equipment off. I'm leaving the room. I only want the people in this room who write their names on that board." And I was shocked. Like I said, ooh. I didn't stay for the rest of the game. I had to go to another game where I was dropping a puck to kick off a tournament. And I said to the assistant coach who I work with during the year with another team, "Gee, I'm going to call you after to find out how this went. I've never seen anything like it." And when I called, he said, "We should have tied the game in the last 10 seconds. They didn't count a goal." The girls really responded. So this particular coach, he knows how to push buttons. He knows how to play the game as a coach with players to get the most out of them. And I've